Grandpa, would you please tell me some stories of when you were young?
Yes, on July the 27th, 1928, the day I was born.
Grandpa, not that far back.
Well, I went to the little one-room schoolhouse in Claybank. It was 2 miles down the road. There was no buses to carry us back and forth, and it seemed to be uphill both coming and going.
Not that far back.
Well, you're 16.
Yes.
I'll tell you what I did when I was 16. In 1944, war was raging in Europe. There was a bountiful harvest in Alberta. And I, as a tender 16-year-old boy, boarded the train and went out on the harvest excursion.
Wow, then can you tell us what you did at 18?
At 18, I went west again and worked on the Mackenzie Highway. In 46 and 47, we worked on the Mackenzie Highway, and I learnt a lot of things on that eventually worked out in our own business here.
So what was the smartest thing you've ever done?
Marrying my wife Eileen on the 16th of May, 1952.
And where did you guys go on your honeymoon?
We went back west again and worked for the same company that we worked for earlier. And on the weekends, we traveled Alberta, went to up to the Banff, Lake Louise, and various places, and enjoyed our honeymoon.
And when did you come back east?
In January of 1953, and our firstborn, Janice, was born in Huntsville on the 17th of November, 53. Being parents, we had to get away from the gypsy life and settle down.
And how did you do that?
By starting our own business. In 1954, we bought a bulldozer and a backhoe and started working up and down the valley. And we did this for 27 years. We had worked with the bulldozers first and then got into the drainage business, which worked very good for us.
All right. Enough of that stuff, Grandpa. Tell us how you built this beautiful island here.
Just read the book, George's Legacy. It's all right in that. No, when the Arnprior generating station was built, holding back some 80 feet of water and flooding up to the tail race behind us at Stewardville. And on this property here, this is lot 7. The lot 5, 6, and 7 on the 8th concession, the water was probably raised to 25 feet. And when we first knew where the water level was going to be, we walked the island and decided it had too much potential to ever consider selling it. And we decided at that point in time to build a causeway and connect lot 6 to lot 7.
And where did you get the necessary fill to build the causeway?
Just lowered the level of the proposed lake till we got enough fill to build it and raise parts of the island to the 327.5 level.
So at this point in time, was Ontario Hydro hard to deal with?
Actually, I'm quite happy the way our deal with Ontario Hydro went. First of all, they wanted to buy this island, and then it wasn't for sale. And then we were able to, they wanted to buy to the 330 elevation. We finally got them convinced to let us own the property to the 327.5 elevation. But what really closed the deal is when I had the opportunity to buy some 35 acres of waterfront property. That's where Bruce and Wendy now live, and it was good deal.
So who would you say did most of the work on making the island what it is today?
To Steve, I would say our son Steve, we had purchased another dump truck, a 933 cat loader, a Northwest 25 dragline. With this equipment, Steve worked the better part of 2 years, moving thousands and thousands of yards of material, building the causeway, and lifting up the island, raising the island. Had we not the foresight of doing this before expropriation, it wouldn't be like this at all.
So when did the flooding take place of the 325 elevation?
In late May of 1976 and early June.
So there's actually pea gravel placed along the shore from the causeway right up to the point past the cottage. When was that put there?
In 1996, Steve had found some of this particular pea gravel which we were looking for down at a pit in Corkery, and he moved it up.
So how big is the island or the peninsula today?
Actually, it's 14 acres. We gained another 4 acres by building the causeway and raising part of the island to the 327.5 elevation.
There's a lot of big rock on the upstream side of the causeway. Where did they come from?
When Trans-Canada pipelines went through up at Lot 2, Concession 6, they had some surplus stone that they wanted a place to dump, and we knew we needed some here, so we let them dump it there, and then Steve brought it down to protect the causeway.
And didn't you once work for Trans-Canada Pipelines?
Yes, I spent 2 years working for Trans-Canada as drainage
consultant?
consultant, right.
So getting back to the island, in a few words, how would you describe it?
In one word, paradise. I have had many, many compliments on how it looks, and there's been many get-togethers, picnics, and so forth. And actually, there was 2 weddings took place here. Jeff keeps the island nicely trimmed up, and Bruce does the bush hogging on the road in and out.
So Grandpa, you and Dad actually built a generating station on the Waba. We would like to hear a little bit about the history, when, why, and how, etc.
Again, read the book. We conquered the mighty Waba. It's all documented in there.
Okay. So when did you buy the land where the plant is situated?
In 1949, when I was 21 years old, we purchased 100 acres there, and I logged it for 3 winters.
You know, it's a pile of work what you did. What made you decide to proceed with the project?
Well, in talking with Laurie Japy, who had already built a plant on the Waba, and he was very interested in our site, and Morris and Lyle Stewart, who owned the land immediately upstream from us, were going to build one. We studied it out and felt that it was a good move for us to build a generating station too.
At this period of time, was Ontario Hydro promoting the development of these small plants?
Yes, and there was a pre-feasibility study with a charge of $3,000 they were able to do.
And what did it say?
Well, it said it was feasible to go ahead and build it if we were willing to do a lot of the work ourselves and use like a used generator and used penstock and that, which we did.
So how much head were you able to get?
By building a weir, holding back 4 feet of water up close to the top end of our land, and digging a canal 1,000 feet in length, dropping it back into where the generating station was going to be, we got 22 feet.
So how long would you say it took to complete the whole project?
A little over 2 years.
So before you could start construction, the company needed a name. How many shareholders in Barrie Small Hydro Limited are there?
2, just Jeff and I. Having built the island a few years before, we had the necessary machinery, and I felt I had a little bit of expertise on how to dig the canal and that. And Jeff, he was a young chap, 18 years of age, going to Algonquin College, hadn't really started his life work, so we formed a partnership called the Barrie Small Hydro and proceeded. We're ready to proceed.
So who built and installed the turbine?
Mike GP of Canadian Hydro Components offered us a good deal to build and install the turbine, but he wanted and got the privilege of bringing in prospective customers to our plant to show what he was able to do. It made it really a good deal for both of us.
So who did all the electrical work in the powerhouse itself?
Ted Pritchard, a local electrician, and he did a good job.
So in looking through the book Conquering the Mighty Waba, we see pictures of pulpwood and log. Who did all the clearing for these?
We did it ourselves, again. Actually, my good friend Fred Kersh, who is no longer with us, him and I would go in and we'd cut and skid logs and trees out all week, and then Bruce and Jeff would come in on the Saturday and saw them up and pile them up.
So who built the three-phase line from Robertson Road to the plant?
We did that ourselves again. Steve come up with his excavator, dug the holes, put in the poles, and then we had 2 retired hydro employees who strung the wire up, and the line was built in jig time.
So in looking through the pictures, Conquering the Mighty Waba, did you happen to have a vision of how it would look when finished? And who would you say helped you the most?
Well, to do anything, you have to have a vision of what you're going to do and go work to that end. Jeff and I had a lot of assistance from Bruce, who has inherited some of his Uncle Willie's skills.
You had several cement pours. Did you happen to need help on these at all?
Yes, the way we worked that, the stewards were building theirs at the same time we were doing ours. On our cement pours, they come down and helped us pour our cement. And then when they needed a pour, we took the drag line with the cement bucket up and poured theirs for them. No money exchanged hands.
So when and who built the powerhouse?
Bruce and Jeff actually built the powerhouse, and the part started in the fall of '89, and it was finished up in the early winter of 1990.
When and who installed the turbine then?
Canadian Hydro Components installed the turbine and generator in the spring of 1990. We went online on the 17th of July, 1990.
We heard you mention the guillotine. Where is it situated and what does it do?
Well, it don't cut off heads. It's at the intake there, and it's to cut the water off, so going down the penstock, so we could do work on the turbine or the generator.
Grandpa, when you saw that flagpole being put up over there, what does that mean to you?
Well, that's Canada. Canada Day. There should be lots of flags flying there. I don't know if that's the right answer or not.
Very patriotic.
Eh?
Very patriotic.
Patriotic, yeah. Right.
What does he think?
So, Grandpa, what do you think of Canada?
Best country in the world.
Good answer.
Simple as that.
Why?
Well, when you read the papers of Syria and all the different places, the turmoil that has taken place, and then you look at our own country, you can't help but be thankful to what we have here. The politicians, they may fight each other, but it's still the best country there is.
What was the Arnprior area like around here in the 1950s?
The 1950s. I think that in the 1950s everything was going good. The population of Arnprior would be 6,000 or thereabouts, maybe. That's just a wild guess at it.
Oh. What do you think about the people that were here before you and how they settled?
Well, they had to work hard, and when they were growing up, there was no electricity through the area, and just they made a good life out of it.
What was it like during the 1940s for you? What was it like during the war?
Well, we listened to the news and to hear the war, with the war going on, and at that time you couldn't wait till you were old enough to be able to get into it. But on second thought, like now, a fellow's glad that he wasn't old enough to get into it. So that was basically the way we looked at it in them days.
What was so special about Grandma?
Well,
Why'd you marry her?
she was a beautiful little chick, and we had a lot in common. And I've lived now some 63 years, and I've got to have our first major fight.
So what do you think of Ontario Hydro today? The fact that they're using more solar panels and wind generated?
Well, I can't understand what they're doing at all, really. Like this wind power and solar power, it's up from 50 cents to, some of it is even up in the 80 cents costing, and we're really generating it for just in the less than 10 cents. I'm more for water power, and to heck with the wind. Well, actually, I think they could buy their power from Quebec a lot cheaper than building wind and solar systems.
Yeah. What was the name of your mother and father, and where did they originate from?
Okay, my father's name was Arthur Barrie. My mother's name, before she was married, was Elsie Laughlin, and they were married in 1921, and let me see what all. Dad died as a young man in 1959 at 60 years old, and Mother passed away Christmas Day of 75. The Isle of Man, that's where they claim they come from.
When was this property purchased in the Barrie name?
In, let me see, I would say about the 1870s.
Oh, wow. By who?
By my grandfather, William Henry.
Oh, really?
William Henry Barrie, yes. Him and Uncle Watty, I guess, went out to West and made some money and sent the money home and bought two farms here. Yes.
And you actually grew up on this
Yes.
farm before you made the island?
Yeah. Yeah, this is where we grew up.
Were you guys the first settlers on this property?
This back end was owned by the McLaughlin brothers lumbering, and in Lot 5, I'm really not sure whether it was or not at the first.
What was this waterway like before it was flooded?
Well, if you can picture it down 20 feet lower than what it is now, like over on this side, there was just a small little creek. It was called Cranston's Creek, and it wound its way head on up the line there.
What did they call the flat rapids?
The Flat Rapids.
Dad! Oh my god, you make me sound dumb.
Well, if you look at any of the pictures before this island was, before they flooded there, it was flat rapids straight ahead on down past here. And was why it was called the Flat Rapids.
Grandpa, can you tell us some stories about out west?
Yeah, when I worked up on I spent 2 years working up on the Mackenzie Highway, and we running bulldozers there and scrapers. And actually one time they shot a mother bear and it was a cub. So we put a collar on the cub bear, and when we'd move camp, we'd move camp right with take the bear with us. And some of the pictures there depicts how we built that road, the Mackenzie Highway.
What was the bear's name?
Bruno.
Bruno.
Bruno, yeah.
You named the bear?
Yeah, that's what we called him. And we've got pictures there of him climbing that right up, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did you get your first job running a drag line?
Well, how would that work? I guess I oiled for a little while. I was running a bulldozer, and I had to take a cut and pay to go on oiling for the drag line. So I oiled that for a couple of months, and then we had to have a license to run a drag line. So I wrote my hoisting engineer's papers, and the next year went out and hired out as a drag line operator.
Tell us a story about the guy you replaced.
Well, he was one that I guess was I didn't really know very much about him. I went in to oil in this drag line, and he was the operator. But then the next morning, he didn't show up, and I had to run the drag line.
How important was the development of the Mackenzie Highway you were working on?
Well, it was the start of the highway to Yellowknife, and actually, it wasn't finished in my day there. I just worked went up from Grimshaw and started at Keg River and worked from Keg River up to the river. But it is an important link in that part of the country.
How many hours a week did you work when you were running your drainage business?
Day and night.
Long hours?
Mom did she did all the book work, and I tried to get home in time for supper. Maybe work till 9 o'clock every night, most nights, starting at 7 in the morning. It was fun.
Who did the farming when you were doing the drainage work?
Eileen, I got to give her the credit for doing a lot of that. She would hire young boys to take off the hay, and I just give her a bit of advice sometimes when she'd take it.
Good.
Other times she didn't.
So from all you've experienced in your life, what are the ingredients that would make up a good Canadian?
Honesty would be the main ingredient. If you're going to do something and you said you're going to do it, make sure you did it.
What do you think of the future of electrical power 20 years from now?
Well, I guess they've got their wind turbines will still be going, and so will the the rivers be producing power too, and they'll be doing it at a lot cheaper rate than the other ones.
Who are some of the main people that helped build Arnprior?
Well, I guess the McLaughlins and the Gillises are a couple of the main ones there that built Arnprior. Employed a lot of people, and in order for to get money to go, they had to work.
How big was the schoolhouse you went to school in?
It was just a one room schoolhouse. I don't know what it'd be. Oh, from here to that second pine tree long, be about 50 or 60 feet long,
Oh, wow.
and enough that all the kids got their lessons in the same classroom.
How did you get there? Did you take the bus?
Well, as we told you at the start of our thing there, we walked and it was uphill both ways.
Ooh.
There was no buses running.
Throughout the course of your life, Grandpa, do you remember any big weather events that went down?
Actually, I would say that we've been very fortunate in this area. Like they've had tornadoes through different places, and just within the last week or so in Vancouver, there was trees falling from the big wind, and here we've been very fortunate where we live here. Have escaped a lot of these hazards that has come by
Why are you proud of your family?
because they're a good family.
What makes them a good family, though?
Well, I would say that they're honest, hardworking, the whole four of them.
So, this tape is going to be in schools for kids to watch. Did you have any wise words to give them for their future?
Well, just don't be a smart aleck, uh, and be honest. Uh, There are strange things done neath the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold, the Arctic trails of their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was the night on the marge of Lake Labarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold. But the land of gold seemed to hold him in a spell, and he'd often say in his homely way, I'd rather live in hell. On a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of the cold, through the Parker fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we closed, then the lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay bundled tight in our robes beneath the snow, the dogs were fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel to toe. And he turned to me, and Cap, says he, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking of you not to refuse this last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he said with a sort of a groan, it's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold, till I'm chilled clear through to the bone. Yet 'tain't been dead, but it's the awful dread of an icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, and I swore I would not fail. We started off at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched in the sleigh and he raved all day about his home in Tennessee. And before night's fall, a corpse was all there was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, as I hurried horror driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may suffer your brawn and brain, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate the last remain. Well, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail is its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. On the long, long night by the lone firelight, with the huskies round in a ring, howling their woes at the nameless snows, oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavier and heavier grow, and on we went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, I was half mad, but I swore I would not give in. I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin, till I came to the marge of Lake Labarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, and I was in a thrice. It was the Alice May. So I looked at it, and I thought a bit. Then I looked at my frozen chum, and then said I with a sudden cry, it's my crematorium. Some plank I tore from the cabin floor, and lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found lying around, and heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. I buried a hole in the flowing coal, and I stuffed Sam McGee. I then made a hike, because I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. The heavens scowled, the huskies howled, the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheek, and I don't know why, but the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I don't know how long out in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars were out a-bouncing about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked. Then the doors opened wide, and there's that Sam, cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace roar. He wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, please close the door. It's fine in here, and I greatly fear you'll let in the snow and the storm. Since I left Plumtree in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done neath the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold, the Arctic trails of their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was the night on the marge of Lake Labarge I cremated Sam McGee. And
Wow, that is awesome.
I didn't know that, eh?
That's not the first time I've heard that.
Did you hear that once before?
I think I've heard that a few times before. That is wow. How can you remember all that? It's just so good, so crisp. Well, I would know if it was wrong, but
Thank you. When we were going to school, the kids had to learn memory work. Nowadays, kids don't learn memory work. They don't seemingly have to do this.
wow, how times have changed.
Change, yes.
Do you have any other good ones?
Do you have any other good ones?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sure you do.
sure. What about this one? Oft in a stilly night, ere slumber's chain hath bound me, fond memory brings to light of other days around me, the smiles, the tears, the boyhood years, the words of love then spoken, the eyes that shone, now dimmed and gone, and cheerful hearts now broken. When I remember all, we friends so linked together, I see around me fall, like leaves in wintry weather. I feel like one who treads alone, some banquet hall deserted, whose darling's gone, and on, and all but he departed.
Wow, just gets better and better.